Mosaic, a daily news program from Link TV, presents a selection of news reports from independent and state-controlled broadcasters from throughout the Middle East.
أهلا بكم. أكد وزير الخارجية الليبي عبد الرحمن الشلقم أن بلاده تتحمل المسؤولية.
Welcome. The Foreign Minister of Libya, Abdulrahman Shalgam, confirmed that his country will take responsibility for the Lockerbie airplane incident. This came hours after the Prime Minister denied his country was linked to the Pan-American airplane explosion in 1988. The American government is expected to lift the travel ban on Americans to Libya. The U.S. State Department spokesman Richard Boucher said that Washington is waiting for Libya to withdraw its statement, mentioning that the Libyan government officially accepted responsibility for this incident last August.
أعلن متحدث عسكري أمريكي في بغداد عن مقتل.
A U.S. military spokesman in Baghdad announced the death of 2 American soldiers in a helicopter crash west of the capital of Baghdad. The U.S. forces confirmed that one of its helicopters crashed at a distance of 260 kilometers west of Baghdad. A U.S. Army spokesman said it was unlikely that the helicopter crashed under enemy fire.
وقد أفاد مراسلنا في العراق أن نائب رئيس شرطة الموصل قتل على يد.
Our correspondent in Iraq said that the deputy chief of police in Mosul was killed by unknown assailants. The U.S. forces announced that last week they killed Abu Ahmad Hamza, one of the assistants to Abu Mus'ab al-Zarqawi, who is considered to be behind many attacks against U.S. forces in Iraq. A U.S. spokesman added that Abu Muhammad Hamza, an expert bomb maker, was killed in one of the homes west of Baghdad during a gunfight. During a speech to International Muslim Scholars Conference in Jakarta, the Vice President of Indonesia said that the war that Washington and its allies are carrying out in Iraq is a war against all humanity. He called on Muslims to be balanced and denounced terrorism. He stressed the importance of dialogue between different religions and strongly rejected that terrorism is linked to a specific religion. The Pakistani security authorities interrogated nearly 42 people suspected of being linked to the Al-Qaeda organization and the Taliban movement. Pakistani forces arrested the people in a surprise military operation carried out in a northern border area near Afghanistan. An official clarified that hundreds of Pakistani soldiers, backed by helicopters, surrounded a village in the region of Waziristan and arrested many suspects. However, they refused to comment on a report in a Pakistani newspaper indicating that Khalid al-Zawahri, the son of Ayman al-Zawahri, was an assistant to Osama bin Laden, the leader of the Al-Qaeda organization, was among those arrested. He will remain under U.S. arrest in Pakistan before he's transferred outside the country. Washington accused a Yemeni and Sudani of having strong ties to the leader of the Al-Qaeda organization, Osama bin Laden. The U.S. Defense Ministry said that the Yemeni Ali Hamza Ahmed Sulaiman al-Bahloul and the Sudani Ibrahim Ahmed Mahmoud al-Qusay were personal bodyguards of the leader of the Al-Qaeda when he was living in Sudan. They have been charged with a conspiracy to commit war crimes.
فرض المتمردون المسلحون في هايتي الذين يقاتلون بشكل مستقل عن المعارضة السياسية.
The armed rebels in Haiti who fight independently against the government have forcefully taken control over cities and vast areas in the north and northwest of the country over the past few weeks, among which is Cap-Haïtien, the largest city in Haiti after the capital. Meanwhile, they have recently taken control over 2 other cities. They refused a state peace plan whose goal is to prolong the conflict for weeks in the country.
منذ أسابيع في البلاد.
Greetings and welcome to the news.
واصلت قوات الاحتلال الإسرائيلي توغلها في مدينتي رام الله والبيرة.
The Israeli occupation forces continue to raid the cities of Ramallah and Al-Bira, imposing a curfew and waging a search campaign, targeting banks, a church, and a number of homes. This raid led to clashes between the occupation forces and Palestinians, whereas the Israeli forces fired rubber bullets and tear gas, wounding a number of Palestinians. The forces also raided Nablus and waged an arrest campaign.
This military operation may be the biggest one in 3 months. A large Israeli force accompanied by intelligence agents and finance experts raided a number of banks, searching for information on bank accounts, claiming they are being used to fund operations against Israel. The Israeli army and about 40 military vehicles raided the 2 cities and forced their way into several banks, including the Cairo Amman Bank, the International Palestine Bank, and all branches of the Arab Bank. They reviewed a number of specific bank accounts after obscuring the bank's surveillance cameras. In addition, they held the bank employees captive and disarmed the bank security officers.
Israel keeps making these ridiculous excuses to justify their unilateral aggression against the Palestinian people. What is happening here today is absurd. It infringes on the bank's security. Their conduct violates all international regulations, laws, and standards.
The Israeli army closed off the neighborhoods where the banks are located with barbed wire and imposed a curfew. As a result, clashes erupted with young Palestinians. A number of them were wounded by gunfire and rubber bullets. A foreign activist was also injured. One man received a lethal shot while throwing stones and Molotov cocktails at the occupation forces.
As a result of today's incident, we've admitted a total of 17 patients to the emergency rooms at the Ramallah and Sheikh Zayed hospitals. 3 cases are in critical condition. There is 1 case with a gunshot to the head. The second has a rubber bullet lodged in his cheek, and the third case, a rubber bullet penetrated his rib cage and is now lodged in his lungs.
The occupation forces demanded that the Palestinian police abandon their posts in the city's center, then surprised the Palestinians with their operation, which coincides with preparations for a meeting of the Fatah Movement Revolutionary Council. This operation may delay the meeting because it could last for several days. Israel failed to end the intifada through military force. Thus, they continue looking for an excuse to justify their position, such as inspecting the bank accounts of opposition factions. Tel Aviv says these accounts are used to fund attacks against it. Majid Saeed, Abu Dhabi Television, Ramallah.
ومن المغرب إلى لاهاي إلى هولندا حيث وصلت
In The Hague in Holland, the International Court of Justice continued examining the Israeli wall case. Judges listened to arguments and statements that were presented by Jordan, Indonesia, and Cuba, proving that the wall is illegal. Meanwhile, Israel continued its campaign outside the court, condemning what it called Palestinian terrorism. To shed more light on what happened on the second day of hearings in the International Court, Mustafa Al-Barghouti, the Secretary of the Palestinian National Initiative, joined us from outside the headquarters of the International Court in the Dutch city of The Hague. Before talking to him, we first view this report, which addresses the latest developments concerning the wall in The Hague and in the Palestinian territories.
أرادت إسرائيل تقديم الدليل العملي على موقفها الرافض لمناقشة مسألة الجدار.
It seems that Israel wanted to provide the International Court of Justice in The Hague with a practical illustration of its position, which rejects having the International Court discuss the issue of the separating wall. Israel was not satisfied by just boycotting the court hearings and casting doubt in its legitimacy. It confirmed its rejection by starting the construction of a new section of the wall, extending 42 kilometers north of the West Bank. Violent clashes took place between the Israeli police and hundreds of Palestinians from Beit Swerka village, where the wall cuts through. Without success, Palestinians tried to form a human shield in front of the Israeli bulldozers to stop them from raising the land and uprooting olive trees. The Israelis used rubber bullets, tear gas, bombs, and clubs to disperse the demonstrators, injuring many people. Israeli Prime Minister Ariel Sharon said that his government is determined to complete the construction of the security fence, regardless of the court decision, and said that the hearings are international absurdity and hypocritical. According to the plan that was put forward by the Israeli Defense Ministry, the construction of the separating wall is scheduled for completion by the end of next year.
we decided not to take part in...
We decided not to take part in this political charade like most of the European countries. Therefore, the issue that should be discussed is terrorism, not the Israeli security fence.
You said that there is support from the American people. But today, the official spokesman of the White House, Scott McLennan, urged the International Court in The Hague not to give its advisory opinion on the separating wall. How do you view this appeal?
That is very strange because it contradicts the efforts of everyone trying to see peace in the region. In any case, we are not surprised because the United States had a similar position when sanctions were imposed on the former South African regime. The United States was the last country to change its position. The same will happen in this case. What I want to explain is what happened in the court today. One representative said that Israel has taken us back to the Dark Ages by constructing this wall. The Cuban representative said that this wall is a war crime. The Jordanian representative said that what Israel is doing now is not only threatening the Palestinians, but also other countries like Jordan. Therefore, the Israeli position is being refuted. Israel claims that if the International Court makes a decision on this issue, then the peace process will be destroyed. But that is not realistic. The wall is what is destroying the peace process. If the court makes a decision, that may help stop the construction of the wall and bring it down, which in effect is the best contribution to the advancement of true peace in the region. If they expect the Palestinians to surrender and then call it peace, then they are mistaken. We will never surrender. We have great feelings today. The mass grassroots demonstrations which were held yesterday in solidarity with the Palestinian people confirm that we will prevail because the free people of the world are with us.
أثنى مبعوث الأمين العام للأمم المتحدة تيري لارسن على خطة رئيس الوزراء ريال شارون لإخلاء مستوطنات في قطاع غزة.
United States Envoy to the United Nations, Terry Larson, praised Prime Minister Ariel Sharon's plan of evacuating settlements in the Gaza Strip. In his monthly report to the United Nations Security Council, Larson said that no Israeli Prime Minister has ever dared to take such a step. He added that everyone should welcome the Israeli withdrawal from the occupied area, explaining that this step is only one step toward implementing the roadmap. Larson called on the international community to help Israel to evacuate settlements from the Gaza Strip.
No Israeli Prime Minister has previously had the boldness and the vision to say he will remove settlers, as long called for by the international community, and initiate a plan for its implementation. The proposed step, withdrawal from occupied territory, should be welcomed by all. Mr. President, the announcement has set the stage for three possible scenarios in the coming months. One is the resumption of a vigorous peace process with re-engagement between Israel and many of its Arab partners. The second is unilateral Israeli disengagement from parts of the occupied Palestinian territory, starting in Gaza, but not as a part of a process for re-engagement. The third centers on the inability of the parties to enact this withdrawal, which would maintain this status quo, with all the violence and misery that goes with it. This could lead to the rapid erosion of the Palestinian Authority, and with it growing disorder, chaos, and possibly even gang rule.
هذا وأعرب سفير إسرائيل لدى المنظمات الدولية في جنيف يعقوب ليفي عن أسفه لقرار منظمة الصليب الأحمر.
Israeli ambassador to the International Red Cross in Geneva, Jacob Levy, said that he is sorry that the International Red Cross criticized Israel for the construction of the anti-terrorism security fence. Israel was forced to build it because it was subjected to a large number of terrorist suicide operations, killing hundreds of unarmed Israeli citizens. In response to the Red Cross statement concerning the wall, Ambassador Levy said that it is contradictory to the traditional neutral role of the Red Cross. The International Red Cross had said that the construction of the security fence violates international humanitarian law.
And we've seen that the wall has a very dramatic humanitarian impact on the lives of Palestinian people. We have also analyzed it from a legal point of view, and we've come to the conclusion that in as far as it deviates into occupied territory, it is a violation of the international humanitarian law.
وأكد سفير إسرائيل لدى المنظمات الدولية في جنيف أن
The Israeli ambassador to the International Red Cross confirmed that the Red Cross statement may be used as a political tool against defense measures taken by Israel, adding that it is also negatively affecting good relations between Israel and the Red Cross, which prevailed during past years. The two have worked together to improve the living situation of the Palestinian people. The Israeli army commander of the unit that operates in Jenin emphasized that the separating fence that was constructed there has prevented dozens of terrorist operations from taking place inside the Green Line.
We stopped completely. Before the security fence, we had about 10 incidents of suicide bombers inside Afula that came out of Jenin. The fence stopped it completely and prevented the suicide bombers from coming out. Actually, we try to open the gates daily. We know we have problems with that area. We are studying the methods and ways to open the gates so people can come over and cross and work their fields. The fence is a temporary security solution. It's not an electronic fence. When you touch it, you don't get electrified. It gives off it's a sensing fence that gives us a signal, and we can go and check the signal. When we want to take it apart, or in the future, when we need to take it apart, we'll be able to do it. It's not a permanent solution.
At least 564 people were killed and some 300 injured after a powerful earthquake rocked northeastern Morocco on Tuesday, leaving hospitals struggling to cope with a flood of casualties amid a desperate search through devastated villages for survivors. As aftershocks rippled across the region, thousands of panicking residents spent the night in the open.
Nearly 600 were killed and hundreds others were reported injured in and around the Mediterranean port city of Al-Husayma when a powerful quake measuring 6.5 on the Richter scale struck Morocco early on Tuesday. Doctors were struggling to deal with the dead and injured at the main Mohammed V hospital, where dozens of corpses were laid out. Many more injured were being treated in army barracks, health centers and charity homes. Others were airlifted to the capital Rabat, Casablanca and Meknes.
So far, the number of casualties are not confirmed, but the numbers could run into the hundreds and there are possibly thousands of injured. And so far with the rescue effort, we are trying to pull as many people as we can out of the rubble, but a lot of people are in a bad state. However, we are lacking in equipment and machinery designed especially for this kind of effort. This will help speed up the rescue.
Hundreds of aftershocks continued to ripple across the region Tuesday, including a midday tremor measured by a Moroccan geophysical center at 4.1 on the Richter scale. These aftershocks and rain complicated relief efforts in the outlying villages in the foothills of the Rif Mountains. In Mzourin, some 10 kilometers south of Al-Husayma port, an official said the quake had entirely destroyed 40 houses filled with sleeping residents. Cries of Allahu Akbar filled the air in this ruined small town, with each discovery of a victim buried beneath the debris. Trucks, tents, cars and open spaces were converted into emergency camping spots, as close to half of the city's population opted to sleep outdoors. Meanwhile, aid and expressions of sympathy poured in from leaders in Europe and the neighboring states. UN Secretary General Kofi Annan said in a statement he was deeply saddened by the heavy loss of life and the extensive damage caused.
Now moving to Iraq, eyewitnesses said that an American helicopter crashed Wednesday over the western town of Haditha after it apparently hit an electrical wire. However, no immediate information were released by the Occupation Command. Meanwhile, the U.S. military command announced Tuesday its forces killed an aide to Abu Mus'ab al-Zarqawi, suspected of being Osama bin Laden's chief operative in occupied Iraq's town of Ramadi. This came as U.S. lawmakers pressed CIA Director George Tenet on recent comments he made about having told the White House prior to the war that Iraq had not posed an imminent threat to the United States.
U.S. military command said Tuesday that its troops killed who they claim was a lieutenant of suspected Al-Qaeda-linked Abu Musab al-Zarqawi. The command added that troops distributing leaflets knocked on the door of a house in the western town of Habayniya on the 17th of February, and the alleged Zarqawi associate opened fire from inside. The soldiers said they returned fire, killing the associate. Brigadier General Mike Kimmett said at a news conference in Baghdad that 3 other men who tried to run from the scene were captured by U.S. troops and Iraqi police accompanying the team. Inside, soldiers found a large quantity of bomb-making materials and explosives, including a bomber's vest with a grenade and a ball bearings on it, pro-Saddam Hussein literature and pictures of al-Zarqawi.
The enemy kill has been identified as Abu Muhammad Hamza, an explosive expert and believed to be one of Zarqawi's lieutenants. While assessed as a blow to the Zarqawi network, he and his group remain a threat to the security and stability of Iraq. And the coalition renews its offer for a $10 million reward for information leading to Zarqawi's apprehension.
Kimmett also announced that the American forces have captured Ayad Hamid Nouri, an aide to former number 2 in Iraq Hazrat Ibrahim al-Duri, in a Mosul hotel. He said that 2 other people were detained as they were suspected of financing and executing anti-U.S. military attacks. In the meantime, troops from the 82nd Airborne Division of the U.S. Army took part in exercises at an airbase near Baghdad in Iraq on Tuesday, despite the fact the division is scheduled to rotate out of the country in the next months to be replaced by the Marines. According to analysts, constant training and development is required in order for soldiers to adapt to the changing situation on the ground in occupied Iraq, as well as to adapt to changing intelligence. On another level, U.S. lawmakers pressed CIA Director George Tenet on Tuesday on recent comments he made about having told the White House that prior to the war, Iraq had not posed an imminent threat to the United States. Republican Senator Olympia Snowe asked Tenet that if it wasn't an imminent threat in his mind, how would he have characterized or assessed the threat at that point in time? Tenet replied, quote, "I would have characterized it as something that was grave and gathering, something that we were quite worried about." Snowe noted President George W. Bush's words in his September 17, 2002 speech on his national security strategy, saying, quote, "When the threat is imminent, the nation has the right to conduct preemptive operations." Senator Dianne Feinstein, who like Snowe voted in October 2002 to authorize Bush to launch the war on Iraq, said that due to the apparent errors of judgment, it was a pretty bitter pill to swallow, particularly with a preemptive war. Blaming Tenet and his poor intelligence for a war decision she voted for, Feinstein addressed the head of the CIA, saying, quote, "People voted to authorize the use of force based on what we read in these reports."
The United States government has formally charged 2 suspected Al-Qaeda members with conspiracy to commit war crimes. They are the first Guantanamo Bay prisoners to face criminal charges.
The 2 accused men are among more than 600 Al-Qaeda and Taliban suspects incarcerated at the U.S. base on Cuba since late 2001. The Pentagon brought the war crimes conspiracy charges on Tuesday, saying they were associates of Osama bin Laden, and they will face the first U.S. military tribunals convened since World War II. Washington has promised full and fair trial for the 2, identified as Ibrahim Ahmed Mahmoud al-Qussi of Sudan and Ali Hamza Ahmed Suleiman al-Bahlul of Yemen. But defense lawyers appointed by the U.S. military dispute this.
My biggest concern is Mr. al-Bahlul's ability to get a fair trial in the commission process. The rules for the commission process are skewed in favor of the government and don't amount to what we would expect in a criminal justice system in this country.
Major Bridges says so far he has not been allowed to meet the man he is supposed to defend, and the charge sheet given to him does not contain any details of the evidence on which they are being tried. Nor is it known if the accused know they have defense lawyers. The Pentagon has also not set any trial dates, but said it won't be seeking death penalties. American legal experts say both the accused appear to be low-ranking Al-Qaeda suspects, and that the Constitution was being bent dangerously to arrange showcase trials.
The precedent that this sets is a pretty grave one. Normally, military tribunals are reserved for the most serious offenses that occur during a time of war. Here you have a set of charges that are being brought against fairly low-level people. They're being brought on the basis not really of post-September 11th conduct, but conduct that occurred in 1990, in 1995, in 1998. Basically, what the president has done is seek an open-ended power to try anyone he deems appropriate before a military tribunal for acts that may have occurred years ago. The Constitution in America doesn't countenance that type of power.
Now they've been charged. Sure, it's good that they're actually getting some charges against them, but if you're going to be charged, you should be charged in a court where you have a reasonable right to defend yourself. These courts are really courts that are slanted toward conviction.
Military tribunals by nature always favor the government, but the fear is the Guantanamo trials could end up being a blatantly one-sided game. Jamal Ali, Dubai Television.
France has